And now I'm going to show you what I made with Windsurf in about 24 hours. This is going to be a prototype of a service that we're proposing a specific workflow for the client. And instead of just going up to a whiteboard and drawing like, well, the interface could look like this and it should do these things and it could, I have software. I have something that is functional that I can show them. But what I want to do is show off a little bit. If you haven't seen Windsurf, I'm going to show you a little bit of what it looks like, a little bit of how it functions, those sorts of things. And sorry, just making sure the chat's cool. All right. So like I said, this is Windsurf. This whole project that I'm going to show you has been generated from scratch in Windsurf. It's all prompt engineering. I basically said, hey, I want a front end that's going to be React. I want a back end that's going to be .NET. Our client uses .NET for a lot of its application services. So keeping in that theme, we're going to do that. This prototype is made up of two components. The backend is a CSV upload microservice, pretty darn generic, and it generated everything. I said, hey, Windsurf, generate a CRUD REST API for uploading CSV files, and that's what I got. So I'm going to switch over here. You'll notice I'm using tilt in the bottom here. I've got a tilt file at the higher level that will bring all this in. And get this going. So let me show you around a little bit, and then we'll jump into how it was made. Here we've got tilt going. Here is again that REST API I said, and we want Swagger. Like we need to not just Swagger, but we want Swagger UI so that we can show off what the API endpoints are like. And here you go. It made every endpoint that I need. I then asked it to add a specific endpoint where I can get the columns from a CSV file. I don't want to have to, our client's potentially uploading 10 million row CSVs. So we don't want to have the browser have to load 10 million rows of CSV up just to pull the column names out. So in the backend API, just do that there and then pass it to me. And then similar to that, I want samples. So pull some random rows out of this and the CSV file, and I will take that and do stuff with that on the front end. So two custom endpoints that I just said, hey, create these things, and it added these and added them to the Swagger spec. So very straightforward there. I'm going to show you this one just to prove this is on 3000. That's where this is coming from. And then I'm going to ignore that because I'm running npm dev run dev locally, and I'm going to use this one just in case something goes off the rails. Cool. So here's the React interface. I started with this, telling it, hey, I'm going to do an application that has 3 steps. I need to upload a CSV. I need to do some things about mapping data, and then I'm going to ask you to generate some code at the end. So I'm just going to go end to end what this application currently runs like, and then we'll talk a little bit about what I did to make it. So here I've got an interface for uploading various things. I'm going to go ahead and drag in a sample CSV, fairly small. This is not the 10 million row CSV of our client. It is purely sample random data that I came up with using Faker. I can go in, go look at the columns. Again, just said, hey, give me a modal. I need it to show all the columns. We got that. I can upload other files. This is the same file with a different name. It's there. I can select and deselect, and if none are selected, like I've got rule sets in here for the application already built. All right, here's our mapping interface. So I went with a node-based approach for how to do the data mapping. I started with, okay, give me a node that is going to represent that source CSV file, and let's start formatting it. I've got the column names on the left. I've got sample data on the right. At the bottom here, I can bump through. So this pulled sample data using that sample API and is populating it on the right. As I cycle through it, it updates all those columns. If I don't like the sample data, I can re-roll. It'll pull 20 more random rows out of that CSV and let me bump through those. All right, time to map data. Let's put first name to first name. All right, my data is flowing from here to here, and it's showing me on my recipients. We're going for a data domain driven approach going forward. So we're trying to map their custom data structure into our defined data domains. And so here's a node for the recipient domain that we're building. And so I need to map this over there. That's what this does. So I'll go ahead and do that a couple more times. As I bump back and forth on the left, it updates over here. All right, that's fun. That's cool. Hang on, that's too much work. Hey, ChatGPT backend OpenAI, do it for me. All right, so that just went ahead and looked at all of the column names on both the source and destination and auto-mapped everything that made sense to it within a confidence rating of what the column field is. So you'll notice that it mapped to address line and not address line 2 when address was there. It can multi-map. So if there was first name and 2 first name fields on the right, it would do both. Then let's see. So that does the mapping. Again, if we bump through this, it shows all of that. I'll redo this sample, new sample set that's coming through. This is awesome. This is what I'm looking for to map these things in. We do have things like if you delete the thing, takes that away, that sort of thing. I've got rule sets here. Destinations can only have one source. So if I draw here, you can see last name goes into first name and last name there. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but can do that. But you cannot have 2 things go into one destination. So rule sets are in place there. All right, that's fun. That's cool. But wait, there's more. Let's bring a concat in. We're going next level here. So we know that the data that's coming in, we have a system here. We end all email addresses off of this client's information with I'm going to use Blue Cross Blue Shield today because that's the email domain I'm familiar with. I don't know why that went down there. I should call that out. Formatting here, this obviously needs work. And the fact that this node does not look like this node and this node doesn't look like, you can tell this was made by Windsurf and AI because some of the standardization between this, even though I worked with the chat prompting to try and keep it in generics and object-oriented and component-built interfaces, it still had trouble. So it's a great prototype, but it will need additional tweaking to get the formatting in place. All right, let's finish this demo. So we get that first name, we get that last name. I'm going to add that. And now, why is it not doing it? Oh, there it goes. All right. I don't know. Something went wrong in the fire off event update, but there you go. It's now concatenating the first name, last name fields and outputting that there. Then we're taking that in as input 1, and we've got our concat string at the end that we're going to just append to it. And then I'm going to stick that into the email field there. And that now is the joins that will happen to modify the data set in that table. Again, we can watch this run every time we update the sample. We can see how this flows all the way through into that destination node. That's the idea. This is what we're trying to explain to the client. This is how you need to start thinking about how to get the client, their customers, an interface like this so they can do their data mapping in a super easy, very logical, fast feedback way. And this is a lot easier for me to show them what that means without having to go up to a whiteboard and go, okay, now I'm wiping out this sample. Now it should show this, and it shows it over here. And this is a lot faster feedback to them of what we're talking about in that direction. Now they even have a system that's kind of like this, and we're part of what we're going to have to explain to them is instead of each of these nodes truly being the compute, how the concat works and all these different things. What this needs to represent is the definition of a pipeline, an ETL pipeline file that can be run against the customer's data on demand, completely abstracted out of this application. So how do we do that? Step 3, generate code. So I've got a couple of different things. This is going to generate PySpark code. If you're familiar with that, great. If not, it's a data manipulation format. Scripting language built off of Python that specializes in high memory set data manipulation. That's my quick version of it. So I'm gonna do this locally. I want input. I need to output the modified data like that. Generate my code. All right. I now have PySpark code here that is going to load this data in, and then pull in these fields, do some inference. Here's that concat. I will magic behind the curtain. It hard coded some things. This is where the prototype is right now. These should have autofilled from the Blue Cross Blue Shield domain, and there was no dot between. So, yep. There's the script, proof that this works. All right, let's pull up Visual Studio. I'm going to paste that script in here. I have the sample data here. I'm going to save it so it runs. I'm going to run Python Spark, and every translation in that Python Spark script turned into an output here with our domain structure for recipients. These are all of those. There's that translation of the email, even though it didn't take my string fields out of it and that sort of thing. But this is a fully functional Spark script that can be run in an ETL pipeline, be that AWS Glue, Azure Data Factory, Spark in a container, all kinds of approaches we can do with that. That's the app. That's the prototype. That's what we get to demo today to show them the direction we're headed. And all of that was developed in about 24 hours of total time, not in a day, but in 24 hours of total time with prompt engineering with Windflow. I know I'm at 2 minutes. I want to show you real quick what this looks like from a Windflow aspect and a couple of quick tips. One thing I found is to help Windsurf. I asked it to generate me a to-do markdown file of all the best practices around a front-end system, a back-end system, DevOps practices, all these sorts of things. What this allows me to do is go in and say, hey, we want to do a CI/CD pipeline. So I'm going to reference that and use this for Windsurf to track where it's at in the development process of this new aspect I want it to develop. Another thing that I found is have it help you generate an architectural practices. What are the rule sets for building out objects? Particularly, one of the things I'm working with it on is component design guidelines. How should a component in React be built? When do you decide to embed it, extrude it into its own component, and those sorts of things. What this allows me to do is say, let's build, I can't type today, a CI/CD pipeline using the architectural practices in context. So now it's going to keep in mind all my architectural practices and go generate for me a CI/CD pipeline. I just realized that's not quite right. I'm going to stop that generation right there. I want to go back to that. Let's say a GitLab CI/CD pipeline. Didn't want it to build a GitHub. I need GitLab. Here we go. Let's see where it goes. It's going to analyze that file for me. I'm in write mode, so it's just going to write this out for me. It's creating that file. Downsides real quick as this is generating and my time's up. I don't know what all the code does. It's going to be hard for me to step through this and be like, I know exactly what all these pieces of code are. And that's a problem. This is great for prototypes, but it will need reviewed and strengthened and all those sorts of things before this is a production ready thing. Similar to this, I would not just take this pipeline and be like, yes, upload to GitLab and deploy, although it may not be too far from it. But here you go. Here's our Docker creation. It's going to run some bandit scans for security because the architect diagram said security scans were part of it. And the to-do list. Did it update? Sorry, real quick. It did not. I did not ask it to update those. If I had, it would put a check mark in those items. There we go. That was a whirlwind. That's what I got.